Welcome to the 10th edition of the Royal Ocean Racing Club Time Over Distance series. This week's special guest is Ian Walker, reliving every emotion from tragedy to triumph in the Olympics, America's Cup and Volvo Ocean Race. Since 2017, Ian has been Director of Racing for the Royal Yachting Association and is a leading light in the future of the sport of sailing. Ian joins us from his home in Warsash. Ian, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Louay. How are you? Got to the end of the week.
Yeah, fantastic. We've had a couple of chats this week. You're obviously working from home most of the time?
Yes, I am. Yes, I think my team have been working from home for 12 weeks now. So I guess we're getting used to it, but at the same time, it's kind of feeling a little bit old and quite looking forward to getting back and meeting everyone face to face and getting back to more normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you know, we've got quite a lot to get through. Just, 2 Olympic Games, 3 Volvo Ocean Races, 2 America's Cups, and that's just brushing the surface. So we're going to crack straight in, and I'm going to put up. Let's start with this one, Ian. Early days.
You're just trying to embarrass me, Louay. So this was the advent of sponsorship, Louay, the plumber's mate, because my dad owned a plumber's merchant, and of course he managed to put the boat through the business. So hence the plumber's mate. And I had that boat from new, and actually love that photo because the very unhappy looking child stood next to me on the right of the picture was my French school exchange partner who'd come over from France, aged I think about 12 or 13, who couldn't sail. He came over to learn English, and I said, I need to do a mirror open meeting. You're going to have to come and crew for me. So we drove from Kent up to North. That's taken at Norfolk Broads, Wroxham Sailing Club, and we did a mirror open meeting. I'm not sure how well we did, and it was pouring with rain as well. I think he hated every second.
Okay, and then again some early years ones, and the one I'm going to hone in. Who's that top left with you in the corner?
Yeah, they're slightly out of order, aren't they? The one with all the trophies just shows that I was an absolute pot hunter from an early age. That was me just sweeping up in the local open meetings and at my home club at Chipstead in Kent. But actually, I sailed for 4 years with Fergus Ross, and I think when we started, I would have been 16 there, 1986. That boat was taken at Hayling Island, and Fergus was 11. And I actually saw Fergus again a couple of years ago. We were like brothers, really, at the time we were sailing the Mirror. But I saw him a couple of years ago, and he was the skipper of Wendy Schmidt's super yacht, the Elf J or whatever. I bumped into him in St Bart's of all places. So quite a long way from Chipstead and Hayling Island. Yeah. And that's a picture of us in our boat, Turn of the Tide, which we raced in. I think we won the Europeans twice and the Nationals 3 or 4 times, and didn't win the Worlds. But yeah, I think in the background's probably Graham Castle, who was sort of my sailing hero at the time in the orange boat.
Okay.
So yeah, happy times. It was very, very fond memories of my Mirror days.
Yeah. And first Olympic class boat?
Not quite, close. That's a 420. Okay. So, I grew up at Chipstead Sailing Club, tiny lake, no trapeze boats. But I did a training weekend at Bow Beach Sailing Club, and a lovely chap, bless him, is no longer with us, Bev Moss, spotted me in the Mirror and said, "You really should be trying to get in the RWA youth squad, and you need to get a 420. I didn't know anything about it. Anyway, we then got a 420, and after a lot of driving to Gratham and Rutland by my parents over the winter, I was trying to get to grips with what I thought was the biggest boat in the world at the time, a 420. As you can see, my dress sense hasn't really improved since the early days.
Yeah,
in fact, the crew there is Steve Powell, who lives in Hamburg. You probably bump into him in the King and Queen, Louay.
All right, well, yeah, listening on this, we've got so much to get through, but please tell us where you are listening in from, and if you know Steve Powell in Hamble. I'm in Hamble. I'm not sure if I do, Steve. You'll probably You'll probably.
I guarantee you'll recognise him. Blonde hair, and his daughter goes to my school, so I
Of
do bump
course,
in
I
into the
do
time
know.
as well.
I do know him. I do know. Sorry,
Yeah,
Steve.
there we go. So he had the misfortune of being my 420. He also crewed for Johnny Merrick's, and they went to the Youth Worlds, I think, in Canada
Okay.
the year after. But
Well, we're in
yeah,
Canada
so
right now, Ian, aren't we? 1993.
lovely segue, Louay. It's almost like you practiced that. Yeah, the international 14. So I came out of 420s. I was a helm. I went into 470s, but I was always a bit big for helming a 470. Um, but I stuck at it, starved myself to death for about 4 years. Finished fifth in the Olympic trials, and then decided I needed a break from the Olympic sailing, and went and had some fun. Sailed the 14 with a really good university friend, Chris Fox, and yeah, that was us. And by hook or by crook, we managed to win. We managed to win the 14 worlds. I think we were probably the last international 14 to win the worlds with a metal mast. The carbon masts were
Okay.
just coming in. I think we probably won it because we sailed. We put more time on the water than most. And the other notable thing about that was I was very much on a student budget, and I slept in the shipping container all week in Kingston. I remember it was next to a prison. So I was always
As,
worried somebody might break out of the prison and knock on the door of the container one night.
as,
But yeah, a couple of us slept in the container
oh
and
my word.
managed to bring the World's Trophy home.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for those pictures, Ian. They're absolutely marvellous. And here's a very early one, I believe, of you with John Merrick's.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where that is. I've got a feeling that's Weymouth, although I'm just questioning the Shingle Beach. But yeah, Brute was a sponsorship that I think Andy Richards was sponsored by them. They sponsored the Sail for Gold. I'm guessing that would be 1994. I'd have been 24 years old, and having won the 14 Worlds in Canada, Johnny, who'd always been my nemesis, really, my arch rival in mirrors and 420s.
Right.
He was first in the youth nationals when I was second. In fact, he won the youth nationals twice. Anyway, Johnny phoned me up and asked if I'd crew for him. And so at that point, I really was a helmsman. And although I'd started by crewing for my sister, sort of aged 8 or 9, it was a long time since I'd crewed. And but obviously, I was trapezing in the 14. And so, yeah, Johnny and I got together that September, did our first regatta with Palamos at Christmas. And we pretty much went unbeaten for probably a year or so after that. We won the Worlds in '94, the ISAF Worlds.
Okay.
So yeah, no, very very fond memories. And Johnny was just starting out as an apprentice sailmaker at Norths, and I kind of oversaw the management of the program, and we managed to get Mars on board as sponsors. So yeah, really happy days. And
Yeah, I mean, here's the pair of you. I mean, this exudes to me two guys that are really in tune together. I mean, just the way you're fully ramping up that boat.
yeah, that's a great shot. I think that was taken in Miami. I think that was a sort of one of those grey post-frontal northwesterly days in Miami. And Johnny was a wonderful helm, built for trapeze boat helming. Really aggressive on the main sheet and wonderful feel for boat speed. And I think the other interesting thing about that photo is clearly that was for the sponsors. We wouldn't have raced like that because you're not allowed branding in the front 25% of the hull. And I remember we didn't really have any money to speak of, and so we managed to get a whole network of sponsors behind us. Marlow Ropes, I remember one of our first ever sponsors, Hamble Point Marina as well, Marina Developments, and so we would have done an individual photo shoot for all of them, changing the branding each side just to try and give them all much more exposure than we could have done within racing. And so we were early on to that. And I think the Mars deal, which I think was something like £150,000 at the time,
Wow.
would have been the biggest sponsorship deal in dinghy sailing or Olympic sailing by a long shot. And that was really what enabled us to sort of go full time and really push the envelope and focus fully on the Olympics in '96.
And my word, did you? I mean, here is a shot of you with John Merrick's, with your silver medal at the '96 Olympics, with I can't quite pick out that other guy. It's trying to come to me.
Tim Henman, isn't it? Tim Henman?
Yeah,
I
yes.
think Tim Henman got a silver medal in '96.
Yeah, but that was the first of Ben Ainsley's 5 medals.
Oh,
So,
you're right.
yeah.
It is Ben. Yeah, of course. So well, we used to call him Baby Ben in those days, but of course now we have to call him Sir Ben. Yeah, I mean you could see what a prodigious talent Ben was, and we kind of took Ben under our wing a little bit. Probably made him worse, to be honest. Definitely led him astray on a few occasions. But the significance of that photo, Louay, was that it was winning those 2 silver medals for sailing in '96, which is before the advent of national lottery funding. And it was winning those medals that actually made sailing one of the top funded sports in the advent of lottery funding in 2000, which ironically I'm now responsible for oversight of that world-class program for sailing. So it's kind of done a whole generation. So, those, we never realized at the time quite how significant those medals were for laying the platform for future funding. And of course, the incredible success in 2000, 2004 and 2008. And nobody could have predicted, I don't think, that Ben would go on to be, the most successful Olympic sailor of all time. And we were just young, enjoying the journey. Very, very fond memories.
Yeah. Going to move on to... Wow, what a change. I mean, this is the 1997 Admiral's Cup. This is taken during the Fastnet race. Thank you very much, Rick Tomlinson, for this picture. That is a completely different skill set to go to offshore racing in a team from a 420 and both 470, and both you and Johnny on the boat, I believe.
Yeah, we had a lot of trust placed on us by the likes of Peter Morton, who's always been a great supporter of young Olympic and keelboat sailors, and Graham Walker, who was funding the big boats. So I think we had I think it was the Easy Oars was the 40, I think, with Tony Buckingham as the owner, and I think Graham Walker and I think it was a Corel 45. Would have been the big boat, and they didn't have a small boat, the Mum 36, and in fact the owner, I think, who's there in the pit just sort of topping the pole, Tim, he was the owner of Bradamante, but couldn't afford the whole campaign, but the campaign was underwritten by the rest of the owners, and then they turned to Johnny and I and trusted us to run the program. And I can tell you we were way out of our depth, but we surrounded ourselves with wonderful people, and the likes of Simon Fry, James Stagg, Andy Hemmings was on there. I think Nick Puck might have even been doing the bow there. Jerry Mitchell was on the main. We had Kelvin Harrop helping us for a while. Sid Howlett was navigating. So we had good experience around us, and we unfortunately, we were making some of those silly mistakes, but we were given the chance to do that. And the Admiral's Cup was the big event. I remember as a kid going down to Cowes and seeing the professional sailors, all the amateurs that were doing in those days, carrying the sails down to the boat, and thinking to myself, wow, I want to do that one day. And looking up at the scoreboard in Cowes Marina as the results came in from the offshore race, and everybody coming in and slept for 2 or 3 days on the Channel race, say, and suddenly we were doing it. And the first regatta was Key West. We shipped the boat to America, and we just got better and better and better, and we attacked it like an Olympic program. The boat had finished pretty much last in the Worlds the year before, but we fed the bottom, we got a new mast, we developed the sails. I remember going out and practicing offshore boat handling in the middle of the night. So just on our own, out into Christchurch Bay, changing sails in the middle of the night, trying to do it with the lightest people on the bow, which meant I had to get up and do it. So, we really worked at it, and we ended up the top Mum 36. And if it hadn't been for a protest that we kind of got stuck up for by the Italians, we would have been the top boat in the whole event. So all in the space of 6 or 7 months. So wonderful opportunity. And I feel sorry, for some of the wonderful sailors we've got now who don't get the same chances that we had through that event, the Admiral's Cup.
A great message to put out there. Again, thank you to Rick Tomlinson for this. This shot of you with John Merrick's was taken, I believe, during that Admirals Cup competition in '97, which was August, and John Merrick's. It's just months before he died in that car accident. That must have been a really difficult time for you, Ian.
Well, it was a difficult time for everybody, not least his parents and his partner. But in many ways, Johnny and I felt like we were just starting out. We'd won the Olympic medal. We just had this great result in the Admirals Cup. We were sailing Melges 24s, which was the big small keelboat class, a bit like the J70 is now, 100 boats at the big events. And we were at the European Championship in Punta Ala in Italy a few months after the Admirals Cup. And I think we won both races that day in a huge fleet, 80, 90 boats. And the sponsors, Glenfiddich, were so pleased, they said they'd take us out for dinner. So they drove us for dinner, and tragically, the Land Rover were enrolled on the way up the mountain to dinner. And I think there was 12 of us. It was a 12-seater. It was 2 crews and the staff, and everybody escaped with minor injuries, apart from Johnny, who paid with his life. So I think that the best tribute you can really pay to Johnny was, this was, I'm guessing, the 3rd day of the regatta, and everybody's made the effort to go to Italy. And when the news broke, all of the competitors decided that the regatta should stop because Johnny was winning and nobody else felt like they should win that regatta. And so despite the cost and the effort and everyone going to Italy, everyone packed up their boats and went home, and the trophy was awarded posthumously to Johnny. So it was. It still is difficult in many regards, but he was a very close friend to lots of us, not just myself, and but also a sailing partner and a business partner, and I think it's fair to say I've missed him. I think I'd have done a much better job in my later sailing if I'd still had Johnny by my side in the America's Cup or the Volvo, and I'm very grateful for the chances that I've had. Really on the back of our partnership, and of course Johnny never got that chance, so yeah, it's tough.
Well, you've done him proud, Ian, in more ways than one, more ways than just sailing as well. Ian Walker, Mark Cavell, Star Class, and Ian on the helm now. Another massive change in your sailing. How did you get to know Mark? Mark sadly lost Glyn Charles, his partner, in that '98 Sydney Hobart, a horrendous race. How did the two of you get together?
Well, it's just masked in tragedy, really, because so I lost Johnny in '97, and that was just when the 49er was a new boat, and of course I'd sailed 14s, and one of my good friends, Tim Robinson, who I sailed 14s with, he got a 49er, and he and I sailed together. We did 3 worlds together in the 49er, and I think actually, to be fair, Tim was doing that not so much for his own ambition, but for me to try and keep my focus back on sailing at a tough time. And we were in Australia training in the 49er when the '98 Sydney Hobart race took place. And in fact, I would have done that race had my then girlfriend, my current wife, not been flying out to see me. And so I thought, I can't really go off on an offshore race the day she arrives with a couple of weeks holiday from work to come and see me. So I stepped off of that race, and we were driving from Sydney down to Melbourne. I was going to the Boxing Day test at the MCG, and of course the story started unfolding of the Hobart disaster, and it was surreal. We were on the road, pretty much level with where the boats are, and it was a beautiful sunny day. You wouldn't have known anything, and literally 100 miles out to sea, everybody was fighting for their lives, and Glyn was one of the 6 or so people who lost their lives, and I knew Glyn because he was on the Olympic team in '96, and Glyn was very much the dominant force in stars. He had this partnership with Mark Cavell. They clearly were going to go to the next Olympics in 2000, and And of course, Glyn was lost. And, I actually went to Eden to see the boats coming in the hope that Glyn might arrive on one of those boats, which of course he never did. And then I flew to Hobart to see the boats in what has to be one of the most poignant. I'll never forget the reefs being thrown into to the dock there, and the somber mood with all the competitors, especially as I've been there since racing and seen what a happy occasion it normally is. Anyway, as always, sailors, we ended up in the pub, and I didn't know Mark that well, but I reached out to Mark and said, look, I've been through this. I've lost my partner. You've lost your partner. If I can ever help you, or if you ever want to talk, I'm here for you. And then of course we got drunker and drunker and drunker. And after God knows how many beers, I was sort of joking. He said to him, well, maybe we should sail together. Maybe I could sail a star. As I love to say, how hard can it be? Anyway, we all got even drunker, forgot about the conversation. The time went on, and I was on the plane flying back to the UK, having just come 8th in the 49er world, and I thought to myself, well, actually, maybe that's not so daft an idea. So I phoned up Rod Carr, who's sort of forever really been my mentor, and I phoned up Rod and I said, Rod, I've got this crazy idea. I said, I jokingly said to Mark Cavell that maybe we should sail together. I said, but what about it? I used to be a helm, and now I'm a crew, and I know the Star's a really tweaky, complicated boat, but Mark's got a lot of experience, and Glyn wrote really good notes, and maybe we should give it a go. Anyway, Rod said, well, yeah, it sounds a good idea. And so I phoned Mark up and said, Mark, look, I got this crazy idea. And Mark was like, I thought you were joking. But anyway, to cut a long story short, Glyn's boat was in Miami for the Bacardi Cup, which takes place in February. So this is 2 months later. And everything was there, and Mark had his ticket booked. And so Mark said, well, why don't you come out to Miami? We'll sail for a week, see how we get on. We'll do the regatta, and then we'll take a view on it. And we did. We literally, I did 5 days practice in the Star. We did the Bacardi Cup. I remember to this day, we finished 16th out of about 100 boats. And we thought, well, actually, if we can finish 16th with 1 week's practice, what can we do with 6 months practice? It was 6 months till the Olympics at this point. And so we just embarked on this crazy fast track process to try and 18 months. I got that wrong. Not 18 months. 6 months would have been impossible. Okay. So we had 18 months to get ready, and we did. We put an 18-month program together, and as that photo shows, that was us going around the last rim of Mark, the last race, the Olympics, fighting for the gold medal in Sydney 2000. So, quite extraordinary journey, and of course, hugely emotional, because both Mark and myself, we was really 4 of us in that boat. I was sailing for John, and he was sailing for Glyn, and there was so much emotion. It was an extraordinary day, and I'll never forget sailing back into Sydney Harbour, sort of tears flooding down our eyes. So, amazing memories.
Honestly, we need a Netflix series for what you've done. But I'm just going to put a little underscore to that, because days before the Sydney Olympics, Mark ended up in hospital, badly burnt from an accident in a shower malfunction. I mean, you didn't even know whether he was going to be able to sail, let alone win a silver medal.
It was nuts. Ironically, it probably helped us. I mean, we'd been getting pretty good. I think we were 5th in the world. We were ranked in the top 3 in the world, so we weren't outsiders. Although we were still very raw in the boat. We were having to really shortcut some decisions because we didn't have the time to really fully work through everything. So we did have gaps in our armory, but we also had some real super strengths. But you're right. I mean, I think 2 or 3 weeks before the Olympics, we hosted a regatta, and we finished last out of the 16 boats in the Olympics, dead last.
Okay.
And then Mark was in the shower in our apartment afterwards, and he was washing his hair, and the water was a bit cold, so he turned the temperature a bit warmer, and it went boiling hot and literally burnt the skin off his shoulders. And to make things worse, he jumped through the shower screen to get away from the hot water. So he cut his hands and feet. He's 6'7", 130 kilos as well, and he had second degree burns on his shoulders. So it meant we couldn't sail. Um, Anyway, so
Well,
again, you could talk all night on the story, but Chris Mason was one of our two coaches. We had Bill Edgerton, Chris Mason. Chris had to start crewing in order that I could keep practicing. Mark took a break, he healed. We took an absolute reset on all our plans, kept it really, really simple, went into the games. And yeah, it's interesting. It's a long time since I've looked. We lost the gold medal by 1 point, and it was all on the last race. And that was actually all. It was actually a tragedy because we were tied on points with Mark Reynolds going into the last race, and we pushed him over the start line. And with about 10 seconds to go, and he jibed around the pin as the start gun went. We had a wonderful start straight into the left-hand corner. He ducked the fleet, went out to sea, which never paid, tacked, crossed everybody by miles. Him and Ross McDonald were first and second, and that was the gold medal. So, but that's racing. We sailed a great race, and it's an incredible fleet. And I can say I beat Torben Grael in the Olympics, which not many people ever did in a starboat.
no. Well, look, we haven't got any footage from there, but we've got the next best thing. And here's Big Mark, and this was recorded this week.
He hasn't changed a bit.
Hello, Louay, and hi there, Ian. Thank you very much, Louay, for asking me to come and be a part of your chat with Ian today. And you posed the question. You asked me what was the chemistry between Ian and I back in 2000. Sydney Olympics 2000, that's a long time ago. And obviously, I've aged incredibly well. So, the bond, the chemistry, I guess it goes without saying that when two people lose such good friends and sailing partners and then come together in one boat, there's going to be a commonality and united motivation to honour those lost friends, and that was obviously incredibly strong. And you could easily say that throughout my life and throughout that Olympic campaign, that has been an incredible motivator. And it certainly was for us, and that really brought us together. Ian was amazingly compassionate and supportive in those early moments of losing Glyn to me and many others from just the experience that he'd been through. So that immediately gave us a very, very strong respect and chemistry between us. I then started to get to know Ian Walker. I realised that he was a man of great intelligence. His work rate was incredibly high. And that sort of leads me on to my first point, time. He recognised that we just didn't have any time. We had some advantages that we had a pretty good boat on the way. We had some great ideas and some notes left by Glyn. But Ian's ability to cut through the chaff and just say, right, we don't have any time. We don't have any time to discuss this. This is what we're doing. Is an incredibly focused way to run a campaign. And that certainly was the case for us. We just didn't have any time. Differences. We quickly worked out that we do things different. Even from just taking the cover off of the boat, we just do things very differently, and I plod to an internationally high standard, and Ian does everything at 10 times the speed of anybody else, and we realised that was possibly going to be a point of friction. So we very, very, very early on worked out that I was to have my jobs and he was to have his, and it, even just recognising that in a team is a very, very strong thing. And I totally respected him for his ability to plan and all the experience that he had from his previous campaigns, and he respected me the fact that I knew the difference between a screwdriver and a hammer. So we had our different roles on the boat, and I think that's a really big part of a successful team, to really understand your differences. I was his Chewbacca to his Han Solo, you could say. Very different people, did things in different ways, but recognising that was absolutely huge. The other thing was obviously we had an incredible team around us, and just his knowledge of being able to bring those members in and get the best out of our team around us. So our success did come from a lot of hard work. It did come from a natural joining of two very different people to get the best out of each of those people. But we had an incredible team and a bit of luck on the day. And as Ian often says, it's better to be lucky than good. But I think we were both. And it was great sailing with you, and have a good chat. Looking forward to seeing it. Cheers, Louis. Bye. Bye, Ian.
Lovely words from Mark. Very honest.
You never get a short interview. Why say 2 words when 4 will do? God, it's terrible, isn't it? It sounds like it just makes me sound like we hated each other. But
no, he didn't. No, he
Mark,
didn't.
I love Mark like a brother. I'm immensely proud of what we achieved together, sort of in Johnny and Glyn's name over that 18-month period. And I'll tell you one thing: if I was ever in trouble, he'd be one of the first people I'd phone, and I'd hope that if he's ever in trouble, I'd be one of the first people he'd phone for help.
Okay, that says it all. Sydney 2000, Britannia really did rule the waves. Top sailing nation, 5 medals for Great Britain. Very important, particularly for future funding. In is that fair to say to get that haul?
Yeah, I mean, to put things in context, I think we had no funding basically in '96. It was all privately funded. In 2000, we had £5 million of national lottery funding, and for the last 3 Olympics, the funding has been sort of in the region of 23 to 25 million pounds, so 5-fold what we had back in those days. So, it's sort of progressively gone up, sort of plateaued, if anything, falling now. But yeah, amazing. To go into the Australians' backyard and scoop those medals, under the Opera House. That's the medal ceremony on the steps of the Opera House under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. With your family there, you can't beat it.
Okay. Olympics to America's Cup. It's a route that a lot of top-class sailors go, but it's still a massive change. I mean, it was a massive change for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was a huge step at the time. I mean, as always in life, it's all about timing. And suddenly I was a double Olympic medalist who had sailed a keelboat at the Olympics, done well at the Admiral's Cup, and kind of the previous generation, the Chris Laws, Laurie Smiths, Eddie Warden-Owens, who'd been the top racers for a long while, were kind of just getting beyond their sort of prime. And so, when Peter Harrison came in, and for the first America's Cup Challenge for 16 years, he backed the younger blood, and he backed me to lead it. And as you can imagine, I was 30 years old, never had a full-time job in my life. Suddenly, I wasn't running the team. David Barnes was general manager, and he was the one with the experience who was really making all the calls. But I was running the sailing team, and I was, had to get. We were a 38-strong sailing team at that time, and we had a lot of fun. Peter bought 2 old Japanese boats, and we just used to go out in the Solent and go match racing in these massive 25-ton boats, throwing them around. And that was really doing our apprenticeship. And I always look at it as sort of my degree in sailing, really, everything we learnt in that program.
Okay. And you chose these 2 pictures, Ian. Why?
Well, I chose the one on the left because that was probably our best ever win. That was beating Oracle in the round robin. I'll get shot if I get this wrong. I think Andy Beesworth was steering. I think we had a great start. I'll get shot if I've got that wrong.
Okay.
Shot by Andy Green. Oh well. We had a great start, and we just sailed the ship. They were so much faster than us, but we just never looked at them. And Ado was on top of the shift, so we just basically sailed it like a fleet race, never looked at them, and managed to just beat them in the end. And I think Larry Ellison at the end of that day came in, got straight on his plane, and flew back to California.
Okay.
And of course, the other one was Peter smiling He had a lot of flack for his little sort of chair at the back there, but it was a very good way of him being able to sort of hang on. It wasn't always easy in the back of those boats, and we'd sealed off the back of the boat to try and kind of emplate the aerodynamics. So yeah, that was Peter, who obviously invested a lot of his own money in the team, and who also invested a lot in the British Olympic team and in many other forms of sailing and charity, of course.
Yep. I mean, it's just the amount of changes that go on in your career. Here we are, Ian Walker coaching the three girls to Olympic gold in the Yingling in 2004. But what I noticed straight away, the girls aren't wearing the gold medals, you are. And that says something, Ian. They've put them round your neck, haven't they?
Yeah, they hadn't paid me. I said I'd keep the medals until they paid me. No, and I think Shirley and her team were not only very talented, but also had a brilliant work ethos and really were leagues ahead of the competition. I think they won with 2 races to spare. In fact, they didn't sail at all on the last day. So it was a real privilege to work with them. But actually, when I started with them, they were really struggling. And I'm not taking the credit for that change, but I think it was one of those situations where they had so many options. They needed somebody to come in and actually try and simplify things for them, which is what I tried to do. But no, real privilege to work with them. Still very good friends this day, and I think they were also very generous in sharing the accolades, which of course they're doing by letting me have a photo with the medals on there.
I remember Shirley at around that time. I interviewed her, and she said to me, "We were really lucky to get in." They were her words. I still remember them.
The other good story about that, you see the girls are looking sort of, they don't look like they've just come off the water, do they? That's the medal ceremony. And that's because they didn't sail on the last day, and they went to the spa all day. And that's the reason we have a medal race now, and it's compulsory to do the medal race, because when the IOC found out that you could win a gold medal without sailing on the last day, they had to change the rules. So
okay,
we can share the blame for that a little bit.
All right, okay. Plus 39 challenge back in the America's Cup. The Louis Vuitton, but you had a mare. I mean, I think you'd lost the rig on the boat, didn't you? But
yeah, the great thing about this challenge was sailing with Ian Percy and Bart and Knocker, and being able to learn from those guys. And I only really got the job because they were struggling, and they asked me to come and call tactics in Trapani. And we had a very similar race to that race against Oracle, where we sailed against Team New Zealand, and we made a really good start. Ian nailed the start, and instead of covering them and, of course, getting ground down, I just kind of went with the flow and took the shifts. And again, we managed to win this race by miles, at which point the Italians thought that I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Of course, 8 times out of 10 you do that, you'll get it wrong. But sort of on the back of that and Ian's support, I ended up I was only involved really for the last 6 months, and it was difficult, lack of funding. I remember we went on strike at one time because nobody had been paid for 3 months. We broke our only good mast. We managed to get damages for the mast breakers, which is how we paid the wage bill. Great life lessons. And if nothing else, I got to go to the pub with Bart and watch West Ham Tottenham and do a bit of sports betting. And so, and it was a great cup. And of course, you're always learning when you're doing the America's Cup. So
okay.
I was lucky to be involved, but I don't think anybody involved thought that we were going to bring the trophy back to the team.
Right, Ian, I've just blasted through a whole Louis Vuitton there, but another quantum change into the Volvo Ocean Race with Green Dragon, along with Jamie Bogue. You managed to put it all together, but the boat was late. You had a righting moment disadvantage. You were behind the 8 ball at the beginning of that race, weren't you?
Well, before we even started. I mean, it was the whole story's mad. I mean, Jamie Bogue, who was Shirley's husband, he and I had a little business by now, sort of project managing the builds of some race boats and helping, particularly TP52s, and putting little programs together. And in fact, we won the TP52 Worlds with an Irish owner called Eamon Keneally. And just at that time, Volvo were looking for stopover cities, host cities, and Ireland was booming. This was 2006, I think, and And we had this big connection into Galway in Ireland through Eamon and some of his colleagues. And anyway, to cut a long story short, Jamie, and another friend, Dave Hassett, and I managed to convince the Irish government to underwrite the stopover and award €5 million to underwrite the stopover and start the build of the boat. And Eamon got some other investors together, and we planned to raise the money to build the boat, which was part of the deal, and we paid Volvo the fee to host the stopover, and off we went. Of course, the next thing that happened was the massive crash of the economy. As of course, raising money was near on impossible. We'd committed to the build of a boat, which we were doing in China, it was a catalogue of challenges, really lurching from one financial challenge to the next. And in fact, so much so, I remember writing to Chris Nicholson and asking him if he would skipper the boat, because I never intended to skipper the boat. This was a business idea. And I'd never been properly offshore before. And I remember Nico's reply to me was, well, love to do it, but what's your budget? And I said, well, we're still working on that. And he was like, well, give us a call when you've got your budget. And of course, I realized then no decent top skipper was going to do it. And the only way we were going to have any credibility at all or get a team together was if I did it. So I phoned up Jamie and said, I've got this mad idea. I'll skipper it. And he said, well, you've never been offshore before. You've only been to the Fastnet. And so
I think Ian's frozen a sec there. Hopefully we'll get him back. Here's a video of Ian Walker with Green Dragon, and you can just see what he means. He really was... I think we've got you back here. Can I hear you?
Oh, right. Sorry, did you lose me there?
We'll watch a video here. It was good timing. Okay. It was good timing. We're about to watch a video.
It is pretty difficult driving this boat, I have to say. It's taken me quite a while to get used to it. And one of the things, it varies a lot according to what sails you've got up. Right now we're on the masthead 0, so we're near the top end of the masthead 0. So you have much less film on the helm. So you see Damien here, he's working the main sheet for me, trying to keep the boat on its toes as the wind lifts. And just trying to always balance off how high to the wind we sail against how fast we're going. It's a dream to steer in a breeze downwind, but it's pretty responsive all the time. It's just in the light winds where you can sometimes get a bit stuck. It's a big old boat in light winds, so light airs it can feel a bit mushy. But right now we're 10 knots and the boat's on its toes. We're sailing at about 11. It's good. Downwind, you're talking to the spinnaker trimmer a lot, working with them, but upwind, certainly at the moment, we've got the headsail pinned in and really just talking to Damien, who's just adjusting the mainsail just so that we don't heel too much, and keeping an eye on the numbers. I mean, the key numbers we're both watching are the true wind angle and the apparent wind angle, which is the angle of the boat to the wind, and referencing that with our speed and also the heading and course that we want to steer. We're pretty much on course right now, so there's no point in sailing higher than we need to. We've also got on the dials, we've also got the keel settings. Well, right now that's easy, that's all the way up. And our target speed, we have a target speed for every wind speed and angle, so if I'm not doing a good job or the numbers are dropping, then it's up to the trimmers to give me a nudge and get me back on the pace. We've got a lot of stuff we're looking at all the time. I've got my inshore stance here, which the lads will laugh at me about. I think I'm supposed to stand like this when I'm sailing a Volvo boat, but I'm trying to learn that.
Yeah, and thanks very much to the Ocean Race for letting us have that clip. Just a little medley of pictures, but I want to hone in on it's a tough race, especially that leg up to China. You had a huge gale. I think you busted a boom, but virtually the entire fleet. It was like a demolition derby, that leg, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't hear the audio actually on that video. I guess it was probably me saying something like, "This is leg one of the Volvo Ocean Race. I've never been offshore more than a few days before. I don't know what I'm doing. Judging by the speed, I was 6 knots. I clearly didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, I mean, that leg up to China was pretty epic. We had, sustained 50 knots in the Straits of Luzon. And again, I made a really stupid error, thinking that there'd be less wind downwind of the Straits than right in the mouth of the Straits. But of course, anybody who's been through the Straits of Gibraltar will know the strongest wind is always downwind of the gap. So we managed to launch out. Everybody was sheltering, Ericsson, everyone's being really cautious. And we were like, right, great. Suddenly we've got a chance in our old dog that we think's indestructible. We got a chance to win a race. So we just launched it out there and ended up being a bit too gung-ho, breaking the rim frames in the bow, having to go back to the Philippines, pulling in, getting the carbon fibre out, laminating it all back together. Neil McDonald up to his elbows in epoxy resin. And it was, the whole of the rest of that trip as we went up to Qingdao, we weren't sure if the boat was going to fall apart or not because we were trying to limit the speed. And so epic tales. Every one of those legs was epic. We broke the boom on the leg up to India with real storms in the transatlantic into Ireland. And although we came fifth, just such good memories. And I love that photo. It was much more old school than it is now. Going around Cape Horn with Neil McDonald, who was always one of my heroes growing up. Having a slug of rum going around Cape Horn and sharing a cigar. Not that I smoke cigars, but there's a tradition when you go around Cape Horn, and you can see in the picture there the likes of Damien Fox or Justin Slattery, who did 3 round the world races with me. You get less than that for murder than having to sail around the world 3 times for me. So, and great campaign. And actually, of all the 3 races I did, most of my fondest memories were in many ways from the Green Dragon. It was an adventure in those days.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry to do 2 minutes on an entire Volvo Ocean Race, but you were next.
I told you this was going to take too long.
But you then went to the Middle East.
Yes, this was crazy business plan number 2 or 200 probably. When coming out the back of the Green Dragon, at least we'd run a campaign, and actually the vibe was pretty positive about the Green Dragon, considering all the challenges we had. And Abu Dhabi was suddenly on the map. They were looking for a management company. And so Jamie and I, the 2 bald guys with laptops pitched up, and we pitched to them. And I think they had 79 syndicates pitching for the job. And it came down to 3, which was Offshore Challenges with Mark Turner. It was Alinghi, and it was Jamie and I with our laptops. And incredibly, we convinced them that we should run their team, and we threw ourselves into it. We moved to the region. There's me with the locals out on the Dow. I remember one of the things was the Sheikh wanted us to take the boat to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and we were trying to explain to him that we couldn't get it to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix because of the motorway bridge, and he wouldn't have it. He said, just get the boat to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And that picture at the top there was how we got the boat under the motorway bridge by tying the top of the mast to a motorboat and sort of careening it over on its side. So in Abu Dhabi, anything goes. And we developed a really strong relationship with the government over there. And thank goodness they stayed faithful to us after the first campaign, and we were able to bring it home in the second race.
Well, it all started with records. 2011 Rolex Fastnet race. That was a brutal race as well. That was the race that Rambler 100 capsized. But not only did you set the monohull record of 42 hours and 35 minutes, but it still stands today. That is something else. That is to stand for 9 years.
It probably will stand because it's not the same course anymore. So I suspect it'll stand for many a year. But you're right. We rounded the rock, probably 20 minutes after Speedboat's keel fell off and they capsized. And the Speedboat guys saw us when they were swimming in the water, but we didn't see them. Needless to say, we had enough on. We were trying to change sail. It was 35, 40 knots, and it was the middle of the night. So we didn't see them, but they saw us. Thank goodness they were all rescued safe and well. But it was interesting, that race, because it was quite slow, actually, to the Scilly Isles, but then it was just a blast reach out to the rock and back in 30-odd knots. And interestingly, although we broke the record and beat the other Volvo 70s, we knew we were in trouble because Group Armour was so much faster than us reaching. and that was how it's to unfold over the next year. We were just too slow reaching, and we could see that in that race, and we never addressed it. We could never solve it.
But, you know, pre-race went really well for you guys, and then this was the headline news from leg one of the 2011 Volvo Ocean Race. Rigged down.
I mean, we won the Fastnet, as you say. We then won the import race in like 3 knots of wind by miles. The one condition our boat was really good in was no wind. Unfortunately, when you're sailing around the world, that's not the condition you need to focus on. But we won a lot of import races in light winds. But anyway, we had pretty punchy on the rigging. We had this new solid carbon fiber rigging prototype, really pushing the envelope quite hard, because with Green Dragon we felt we were too conservative. So we were really aggressive and paid the price. Mast fell down first night. It was I can tell you, it was a difficult phone call to the Sheikh when we were back in Alicante while everyone else is going through the Straits of Gibraltar. Really tough times. We ended up shipping the boats to South Africa. We had to cook off new rigging in South Africa, change all the spreader ends, and from then on we were never confident the mast wasn't going to fall down again. Fortunately, we had one spare mast, but we managed to finish the race. We managed to win the transatlantic race. We won a lot of import races, and we just did enough, I think, for Abu Dhabi to keep faith in us as a team, and they trusted us. We were very honest with them, and then we built on that in the next race.
But it was a crazy race. I mean, 2 legs affected by piracy measures, and then in the Southern Ocean, you mentioned Justin earlier on. You said people get off bed with a life sentence and do 3 round the world races with you, and I think this video actually completely proves that.
Sounding. So going to slow down the boat. Now we can hear that we've got some sort of an issue there, and we're tapping around. Yeah, so we think it's probably the core. 2 carbon skins, core in the middle. When they separate, they can move. So essentially, the inside and the outside skin aren't working together, so our sandwich that holds the boat together is failing in that area. So right now we're slowed down. We're going to have to check it out, and we need to talk to some people. But it's certainly not good at this stage to continue at 100%.
Very frustrated. Come to do a yacht race, not a boat building competition, and we're already 1,500 miles behind, and this is not happening our course. So this is not the place you want to be by yourself in the middle of the Southern Ocean. We're a long way from help.
The tortoise in the hare, my friends. We're definitely the tortoise right now.
Hove 2 on our side in the Southern Ocean, with Justin over the side, drilling about 30 holes in the bottom of our boat. So I've done, in fact I don't think I've ever done any stranger thing in my whole life. Not on a boat anyway.
How many bolts has he got out there at the moment?
He's only got
One. A little bit different, not too bad though. Pretty good, it's pretty steady right now.
Okay, tell him we're going 100 mils below that one.
Okay.
100 mils below.
Okay, 100 mil lower. 2 more bolts. There's 2 more to come to you.
Have you got them up there again? Or?
Well, it's alright. I think we've 2 skins tied together, and we've got some pretty nice backing behind here. And, we've got to get some struts in here to try and tie it in a bit better so it can't flex. But but I think we're a lot better shape than we were 2 hours ago.
Bed's done a good job, and yeah, I guess the proof will be when we start going faster, see how it reacts. But yeah, nice work.
I love that. Nice. I mean, you were a long way into the Southern Ocean there, Ian, weren't you?
Well, it was a really nightmare scenario because we had really atrocious weather leaving Auckland, and we broke I think it was the J4 bulkhead in the bow leaving Auckland, and we actually had to turn back to Auckland and get the boat builders to refit it. And so we started the next morning. So we set off 24 hours behind the fleet, and then with the weather systems, that became 1,000 miles. So we had the worst scenario. We were crossing the Southern Ocean with no safety fleet. The nearest boat was 1,000 miles ahead, and the mistake we made was pushing too hard. In that situation, we should have just been cruising, but we were launching off waves, doing 30 plus knots, and ended up damaging the boat, unnecessarily, really. So I mean, every boat, I think, except Puma, had major structural damage on that leg. And had we just cruised along, we would have done quite well. But we broke the boat. We had a really difficult decision: do we carry on, or do we go to Chile and ship the boat to Brazil? I'd say the crew was split. It was a real test of my leadership. Deep down, I kind of thought that we'd probably be able to make it, but to try and get round Cape Horn, and the forecast was pretty bad with a damaged boat. We kind of took a look at each other and decided there's enough of us have got children. We don't need to be taking these risks. So we made the call to go to Puerto Montt in Chile, and really lowest ebb of the campaign. That was having to ship the boat to Brazil. I should say we were at more than 1,000 miles from land there, and that's Juddy putting a survival suit on, us capsizing the boat as much as we can, and him going over the side trying to, as you could see, with the spanners in his hand, and push the bolts through.
You can't get in more trouble than that. I mean,
he's a hard man, and he's always first on my crew list if I go to sea.
A lot of happy campers in this picture. So it wasn't taken in Chile or at the end of that race. This is prior to the start of the 2014 Volvo Ocean Race. Another record, this time in the 7-star round Britain Island, the RORC's race. It goes every 4 years, and that was the first race for the boat, I think, wasn't it, Ian?
Yeah, that's right. This was the new Volvo 65, so ostensibly they were a lot slower than the Volvo 70s, and this was the first real race. And I guess some of the listeners probably did that race. That was the race where the start was delayed because the weather was so bad, and in the end RORC decided to send us the wrong way round. So we went through Dover Straits first and then up the North Sea, as opposed to going clockwise round. And we just had this amazing weather system with a low pressure right over the top. A decaying hurricane kind of sat over England. And we literally reached around Great Britain. I mean, we left Hamble and we were off Newcastle after 24 hours. Next 24 hours, we were coming back down the other side. And we sailed the whole way around Britain. And the first tack we did was to get back through the forts. And I think we had to do 3 tacks in order to get to the finishing line off of Cowes. So I don't think you could ever get that weather situation probably happening again. And although you could get a much faster boat, you could do it on a much faster 100. Even then, I think you'll struggle to do the average speeds we did just because of the weather.
Right. I mean, a fantastic start to your campaign, and it just got better and better. During the actual Volvo Ocean Race itself, the boat was reliable. You got consistent results, and a big hug there with Jamie, with 8 years written on it or something like that.
Yeah, there's a bit of man love because, of course, Jamie was my business partner, and all these troubles we'd have, whether it was trying to raise money, dealing with the sponsors, trying to organise ships, everything else. He's dealing with that, ashore, and I'm the one on the boat, but he's the one who's having to deal with the sponsors and everything else. And I think the emotion just poured out. This was 8 years of work, and I think the emotion when we won the race just came out. We were both just, like I say, hugging each other. But I think the big difference for me was in this race, we were the first team to get started. We had the budget organised from the start. And the other big difference, it was one design. Suddenly I was in my forte. This was about building a team. It was about tactics, strategy. And it wasn't so much about developing equipment, which is where, to be honest, we'd failed in the America's Cup, and we'd failed in the first two America's Cups. Whereas this really was much more like 470 sailing, starboat sailing, small optimizations, focused on just playing the percentages. And we did that. It was I can hardly remember this race apart from the finish, because there was nothing exciting to tell. We were, this was the equivalent of getting a 1-0 win every weekend at football, and in the end winning the season. But there was no, and in the end the results tailed off because we started covering our nearest competitors. And I think for the last leg, we'd already won before the last leg. We were probably drunk for the last leg. It's probably why we finished fifth. But well, yeah, we dominated this race, whether it was the media award, the import race, the offshore, everything just came together, and it all went right.
Well, Ian, let's watch a short video recap of the 2014 Volvo Ocean Race with the first winning skipper from Britain, Ian Walker.
Any problems with Dongfeng?
To get to this moment, it's been a lot of work, not just by me, but all of my team. And now really the baton's handed to the sailors. It's now our turn to do our job and do our job well.
It's going to be pretty full on if it's like this all the way around the world,
What doldrums, they're going to say? The Zam's not even going to slow down. We've had a very, very fast and furious 36 hours. We've done a lot of miles, and the fleet's also been going very quick, so we're in for a very, very tight finish.
Oh, it feels good. It feels fantastic. We're so proud of my team, so proud of everybody on board, but everybody on the shore team as well. And to now be here and get such a fantastic welcome in Cape Town, it puts everything in perspective.
When we went past there, we actually said how easy it would be to hit it at night.
Go!
Chase this cyclone pan in the tail end of it here. Try and elude the high pressure that's going to build behind. And if we can get around the front of the high, that means we can then reach down south. Racing is awesome. Got Alba Medica just here. We're ripping into the back of them. Very exciting. A wise man once told me, get a good start, get in front of everybody, and then cover. It's the easiest way to win a sailing race. This is a chapter of my life. This has taken 8 years of work, to get to here. That means I've spent most of those 8 years away from home, away from my kids, away from my wife, and all of a sudden all of that's worthwhile, and I can't wait to pick up the phone to
to my wife and kids, and I'm sure someone's going to burst into tears. If it's not them, it will be me.
Ian, just a short video encapsulating that race, and I am going to bring in this question here because I think there's a very good answer to this. So we're talking about the VO65 here. What watch system did you keep offshore?
What do I remember? I mean, we experimented with lots of different watch systems over the years, and in the end, I think people just like to know where they stood, and anything that was too fancy generally fell apart. So we just did 4 hours on, 4 hours off. We changed 2 of the 8 people every 2 hours. And both myself and the navigator were in the watch system, and I was opposite the navigator. So Sci-Fi was the navigator, and when he was on, I was off, and when I was off, he was on. So we always had a navigator on watch, and I generally put the stronger sailors on Sci-Fi's watch in acknowledgement of the fact that he was often down below doing the real navigating. I kind of had what I would call a dangerous level of navigation skills, just enough to get us into trouble, but I could keep an eye on it. But whereas Sci-Fi did, kind of the complicated stuff, and that worked pretty well. And generally speaking, you came on deck for 4 hours. I much prefer being in the watch because as a skipper, when you're out of the watch, you never quite know where you fit in. Whereas when you're on a watch, you know what's expected of you. Mm-hmm. So you'd come up, you'd grind for an hour or two, then you'd probably trim for an hour, and then once you've really locked into the performance of the boat, you'd probably helm for the last hour or two. Now I might do more helming than I would trimming, as an example. And I was, by the end of the race, I was on a watch with Parco. So I had some young bloke who could do the running around and go up on the bow. So I made sure I had all that covered, so I could stay near the back.
He was the one with the cigar going around.
He was the willing Labrador. But the other thing I think was, everybody's up for every sail manoeuvre, every manoeuvre. So there's no doubt, there's no question. If you're changing a sail, everyone gets up. And once you know that, then you don't have that whole debate. Shall we wake people up? Shall we not? Everyone up, every change. Same people, same jobs. I helmed every single tack, jibe and sail change for the race, mainly because I was no good at the rest of it, so I could just stick to one thing. But if everyone does the same job, then there's less chance of having mistakes. Same person in the pit, same person in the bow, etc., etc.
Okay. Well, there's a thank you there from Mr. Adler. I know he's been on before. I can't call you SF Adler, so I'll have to call you Mr. Adler. Let us know what your Christian name is, please.
This is your life, Louay.
I can't do the accent though. This is your life. I think that wasn't bad. Jamie Bogue will probably rip it a bit. Moving on. 2017, you became Director of Racing for the RYA. What is your role there in terms of this bunch that are in front of us right now, which is the Team GB that have qualified and been selected to go to the Tokyo Games?
Yeah, that's right. So that's the 15 representatives who'd been selected at that moment. I think that's missing the NACRA team and Elliot Hansen, the laser sailor, who was selected at a later date.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm the director of racing. I really wear 2 hats on the Olympic side. I'm the performance director, so I'm kind of accountable for all the investment by UK Sport in our Olympic team. So setting strategy and basically managing the Olympic manager who has day-to-day responsibilities with the sailors and the coaches. So really I have oversight. I don't live and breathe this all day, every day, but I spend a lot of time dealing with the stakeholders like UK Sport, the British Olympic Association, and working with the Olympic manager to define strategy and use of resources, allocation of budget, things like that, employment of people. Mm-hmm. And then my other hat that I wear is around wider sport. So within racing at the REA, we deal with rules, with team racing, with race official training, We deal with your photo there, obviously the youth and junior side of the performance program, as well as a role within the senior management team across all, working as part of the wider management team of the RIA. So it's a very broad remit, which is fun because I get to touch on lots and lots of different things, but you do get pulled in lots of different directions, and especially at the moment with COVID-19, and it just feels like everything's changing so fast. We're having to react really, really quickly.
And talking of the current situation, here's a cracking picture of you sailing with your daughter Emmy. Can you give us? I know you've got to be careful what you say because of the position you're in with the RYA, but can you give us some idea how you see the immediate future for sailing? Let's say till the end of the year. Oh, what a nasty question.
Yeah, well, I haven't got a crystal ball, and certainly can't tell you what's going on in the government's mind. First of all, that photo was taken at the 470 Nationals last year, where we made a special effort to get as many boats on the water, and so that is actually the boat that Johnny and I sailed in '96. Oh, wow. So that boat was 25 years old. It's been in my garage and the National Maritime Museum, and it's a bit of a project. I did it up, and then Emmy and I went and sailed the Nationals together in Johnny and I's boat. So that was it'd always been my dream, and I kept that boat so I could one day sail it with my children. So anyway, that's an aside. What was the question?
Well, no, let's stay there. I think that's amazing, because that boat holds so much for you. But I think it's a win-win because your daughter's getting to sail with an immensely talented sailor, but you're getting to get some good time with your daughter, aren't you? Quality time with your daughter.
You're very kind, Louay. I'd say she got shouted at for a weekend, and she had to put up with a slightly overweight 50-year-old, rather slower crew. Thought he could still do things he could do 30 years ago that he no longer could. But okay. we weren't last, so
okay.
So we were all right. We were mid-fleet, I think. She did a great job. She normally cruised, so it was she'd never sailed a 470 before, and she normally cruised a 420. She was only 15 or 16, so she did a blooming good job.
Well done. Well done.
Anyway, so where were we? So sailing to the end of the year. I mean, the first thing to say is, where are we right now? So what do we know? Well, right now we're sort of easing out of lockdown, and we know that we can sail according to social distancing rules. So we can sail single-handed, and we could sail certainly double-handed if you're from the same household. And arguably, if you're on a big enough boat and you could guarantee that you would stay socially distant, you could sail with different households. In reality, that's quite unlikely because of the likelihood of having shared areas on the boat and the need for hygiene in those areas. So I think at the moment we're really limited to single-handers and sailing within your own household. And they've just increased the gathering to six different households can be in a gathering. And then this is where the difficulties start, because the definition of what is a gathering, of course, isn't that clear, as to whether that relates to boats on the water or is it just people on the shore. And so as far as the ROA are concerned, very, very much trusting individuals and clubs to come up with their own interpretation of the rules. And we're trying to help them by guiding them as to the kind of things they should think about. But certainly in all the risk assessments, people need to be thinking hard about the impact of COVID-19. Every club is different. I think most of us are all experiencing a different journey through COVID-19. Some people are genuinely terrified of COVID-19, maybe living with elderly relatives or have health problems themselves, whereas other people are maybe younger and are really not that worried about it and think that life should be as normal. So we have to respect all these different opinions, and we have to think about the image of the sport. And I don't think what we should be doing now is just returning to normal. I think that's disrespectful to other walks of society. But at the same time, we've got to get our sport going again. The industry needs it. The clubs need it. And let's be honest, we all need it. We live to be on the water. We're passionate sailors. And so, we need to be making sure that if we're allowed on the water, we can get on the water. And I think deep down, the likelihood of people contracting COVID-19 on the water is very, very slim. So I think the main areas of focus actually need to be ashore. It needs to be how the club is managed, how you manage the boat park, and whether it's moving trolleys, hosing boats down, in the keelboat world, obviously it's a challenge for clubs because clubhouses right now are not allowed to be open. But I think, in July, we'll see some openings. Hopefully we'll see people being able to stay overnight away from their main home. That would enable people to come down and sleep on their yacht overnight. It would also enable us to perhaps host some events because you could travel and stay overnight at an event. But in order for events to really happen and for races to really happen properly, we need that rule around gatherings to be expanded. And I think the two things that would really help with keelboat sailing, especially, would be if the government changed the rules around social distancing. So we have this 2-meter rule now. In fact, it's not a rule; it's not enshrined in law; it's guidance. But we have this 2-meter guidance. If that was reduced to 1 meter, which is possible because I think there's a lot of pressure from the hospitality industry, otherwise pubs and restaurants just won't be viable. So I think if that was reduced to 1 meter, that would enable you to sail, a lot easier in keelboats. You could sail an Expos or something and probably stay 1 meter separated if you were 2 up. So I think if that rule changed, it would become easier. If the government enabled us to create sort of social bubbles where 2 or 3 or 4 households agreed that they could mix within their households, but not beyond, that would enable you to, for instance, partner up with your sailing crew. It would be interesting to see how many people choose their sailing crew over their close relatives or family. I think, if I'm honest, it's the beginning of June now. 2 months ago, I didn't think we'd be sailing in May. So I think we are ahead of the curve. The ROA have done a really good job. My colleagues at lobbying government to get us on the water at the earliest opportunity, and things are easing quickly. And I think we just need to not try and run too fast. We need to be conservative, and that will help us not take a backward step because things are moving quickly in the right direction, and we just need to be respectful and conservative and not take any steps backwards.
Ian, it's wonderful to get a clear understanding of what's going on. I mean, the amount of work that you and your team have put in to what you've just said, to me that's worth this whole exercise in doing this interview. This is sort of a sum up slide, but we've got some stuff to come, and you can blame Mark Cavell for this, Ian. And I'll tell you why, because he told me, he said there are 3 sides to Ian Walker. And I'll tell you what he said. He said there's the compassionate side, and there you are with your 2 daughters and your wife. He said there's the CEO, and we just heard the CEO, and he did a damn good job.
I'm nervous now about the 3rd side of the triangle.
And the 3rd, that's you kiteboarding, and that side of you is the rebel. and they were the three things that Mark told me, and he said, "Don't tell Ian whatever you do because he won't like it." He said.
Taking the last one first, that's me just about a full head over heels on my kiteboard. But I do love kiteboarding. I just don't get to do it as often as I'd like. The wedding photo was quite a funny story. That wasn't staged at all. My wedding reception was at Chipstead Sailing Club, where I grew up sailing. And we came back from the church and we had a few glasses of champagne. And I saw this school had some boats, and one of them was a mirror. And I said to my wife, "Come on, we've got to go mirror sailing on my wedding day." And so I dragged her down. I asked if I could borrow the mirror. I rolled my shoes and took my shoes and socks off, rolled my suit up, and we got in the mirror. And I remember clear as day, she turned to me and said, "If you capsize me, I'm going to divorce you." We'd only been left the church about an hour and a half. But you notice I took the life jacket and she didn't have one. I must have known I was going to work for the ROA.
Oh, wonderful. And your 2 daughters that I know you dote over. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Ian, thank you for sharing the highs and the lows of your amazing sailing career. And I'm sure I speak for all of the viewers in wishing you fair winds for the future. Ian, a last few words from you.
Well, I'm out of breath. I mean, I've just felt I've packed 40 years into an hour and a quarter. But look, Louay, thanks it's a real privilege to be able to have lived the life I've lived, and I think sailing has given me, everything in my life, and that started with the support that I had from my parents. So it's been a tremendous journey. and I remain as passionate as ever about the sport, and I really hope that the sport will continue to grow, and that's my driving, that's the driving force as to why I'm in the role I am at the RYA. So look, thanks for the opportunity, and hopefully I'll get to maybe get out on a keelboat and sail in some RORC races if they let me out of the office.
Well, I wish you well with that, Ian. Look, many thanks. We're going to play out with a video about the wonderful support from the John Merrick Sailing Trust that is now 27 years old. I think this one comes from the 25th. I know you're a massive supporter of it, and so are the whole of the sailing community. And here's the John Merrick Sailing Trust and what they do best. Thank you very much for watching. Next week, Harold Cudmore on the Admiral's Cup, same time, same place.
That'll be a good one. You won't be able to miss that one.
Well, it seems unbelievable that it's over 20 years since Johnny was taken from us. But in that time, the John Merrick Sailing Trust has managed to award over 230 grants to help young sailors with a financial need to progress in the sport. And that totals over £500,000. So thanks everybody for all of your support, and we're looking forward to helping many more youngsters in the future.
The grant I got from the John Merrick Sailing Trust went towards my first Sport 20 with Johnny McGovern. Since then I've got a silver medal in the 470 class, like Johnny himself, and more recently, just this year, a 49er World Championship. So thank you very much for supporting me at that early age.
It's awesome to be, a part of the John Merrick Trust and to have had them support us all those years ago, and also sailing with Stu, who was supported as well, and to be sailing together now, having won the World Championships together this year, is awesome, and hopefully we can build on that and bring back gold in Tokyo.
Back in 2003 I received a grant which enabled me to compete in the Mini Transat and go on to races such as the Volvo Ocean Race, Route de Rhum, Transat Jacques Vabre and RORC's Quest. I very much doubt that any of that would have happened without the support of the Trust and all those that support it, and I'm hugely grateful. It's an honour to now be a trustee for the organisation.
My name is Montel Jordan and I'm the team captain of Project Scaramouche, and because of the kind donations from the John Merrick Trust, we was able to not just compete in a Rolex Fastnet race but also race in it.
Thank you so much to the John Merrick Sailing Trust for helping me to buy all my windsurfing equipment. Without that, I wouldn't have been able to go on and achieve double gold medals at the Youth World Championships.
Hello everyone at the John Merrick Trust. Thank you for your help over the years. It's been fantastic. I couldn't have got to where I am now without your help, and I couldn't be on such a cool boat as this. So thank you for your help and happy anniversary.
I'd like to express my thanks to the John Merrick Trust for supporting me while sailing my Topper and 420 many years ago. I'm now making my living off sailing, completing the Fastnet race, skippering and navigating in the Nord Stream race, and finishing 2 Solitaire de Figaros and preparing for my 3rd. Thanks to you.
This year you've helped me to buy a carbon top section, go to 4 UK qualifiers, the Inlands, the Under 21 Worlds and the Europa Cup. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
I'm ever so grateful to the John Merrick Trust for giving me the grant to help me buy my techno windsurfing kit.
My name's Neve, and on behalf of all the windsurfers at Burton Sailing Club, we would like to thank the supporters of the John Merrick Sailing Trust for supporting our club and helping us to grow. We are now a T15 club and hope to help other people in our area to become windsurfers.
Thank you very much to the John Merrick Trust, helping me getting from junior levels to world-class performances in the laser standard within the British sailing team.
To the John Merrick Sailing Trust, thank you.
Thank you.